Hello, it's Willie from the Ozarks and ready for our January the 9th lesson in A Course in Miracles workbook for students. I see nothing as it is now. I see nothing as it is now. This idea obviously follows from the two preceding ones. But while you must be able to accept it intellectually, it is unlikely, but while you may be able to accept it intellectually, it is unlikely that it will mean anything to you as yet. However, understanding is not necessary at this point. In fact, the recognition that you do not understand is a prerequisite for undoing your false ideas. These exercises are concerned with practice, not with understanding. You do not need to practice what you really understand. It would indeed be circular to aim at understanding and assume that you have it already. Okay, so these are incremental and we're building on ourselves. He says that obviously this one follows from the two preceding ones. I see only the past and my mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. Today being I see nothing as it is now. Emphasizing the now. Reminds me of Sardarian, but who is it? The Power of Now? Good book, good teacher. I forget his name offhand. I see only the past. He mentioned in that all the preceding exercises were based on that idea. I see only the past. So anyway, as we're seeing, these all build on themselves. It is difficult for the untrained mind to believe that what seems to be pictured before it is not there. It is difficult for the untrained mind to believe that what seems to be pictured before it is not there. This idea can be quite disturbing and may meet with active resistance in any number of forms. Yet that does not preclude applying it. No more than that is required for these or any other exercises. Each little step will clear a little of the darkness away, and understanding will finally come to lighten every corner of the mind which has been cleared of the debris that darkens it. Cleared of the debris that clutters the mind or darkens it, he says. Isn't that nice to know that we're doing incrementally, a little bit at a time, we're removing some of the darkness. We're going to look at that in our text reading today, too. These exercises, for which 3 or 4 practice periods are sufficient, involve looking about you and applying the idea for the day to whatever you see, remembering the need for its indiscriminate application and the essential rule of excluding nothing. For example, I do not see this typewriter as it is now. Kind of dating itself. Today we'd probably say, I do not see this keyboard as it is now. I do not see this key as it is now. I do not see this telephone as it is now. Begin with things that are nearest you and then extend the range. I do not see that coat rack as it is now. I do not see that face as it is now. I do not see that door as it is now. It is emphasized again that while complete inclusion should not be attempted, specific exclusion must be avoided. Be sure you are honest in making this distinction. You may be tempted to obscure it. So we're trying to learn to apply our lesson to everything equally, without selectivity based on what emotional feeling might come from us saying this. I see nothing as it is now about anything specifically. Okay, let's take a look in our text reading. And hopefully you have read section 5 and 6, which will finish chapter 2, the illusion of separation. And we're going to look at the correction for lack of love first, and then we'll go take a look in our reading in the Manual for Teachers. So the correction for lack of love, if you want to follow along, I'll tell you which which paragraph I'm reading in. I won't necessarily take a lot of time. I might make a few comments about this, but very little. The correction for lack of love. The first corrective step is know first this is an expression of fear. So in order for yourself to be a correction to take place, first you have to know you need it. And remember yesterday in our text reading, we read that discomfort is aroused only to bring the need for correction into awareness, into forcible awareness. The word forcible was deleted in the version that's been published by the Foundation for Inner Peace. And you know what? There's a lot of ideas, and I think that what Wapnick and Helen Schuckman were trying to do with that version was trying to make it really, really simple, as simple as possible. When you add the word forcible to the equation, that's a new idea that makes it even more expressive. But also sometimes a young student could get lost. So I think of the blue and gold version of the book as more the version printed, the edited version printed by the Foundation for Inner Peace, as more of a great place to start, and then going on to the Course in Miracles, the original edition, the Course in Miracles Society's version, is really a much less edited version. So you get a little bit, you have to think a little bit more. But it brings up new ideas like the celestial speed up's not even spoken of. And yet it's an idea that I think we'll read about that today too. Anyway, it's in the text in our chapter 1. Okay, let's take a look now. Let's go ahead. So just remember the first corrective step is know first that this is an expression of fear. So you got to know that you're expressing fear before you can do anything about it. And then he says, the atonement is the remedy, and these steps can be summarized as follows: 1, 2, 3, and 4. First, know that this is fear. 2, fear arises from lack of love. The only remedy for lack of love is perfect love. That's 3. And then the fourth, perfect love, is the atonement. And what is the atonement? The interlocking chain of forgiveness. Okay, so that's the remedy. All right, let's go on in paragraph 93. I told you before that you cannot ask me to release you from fear because I know it does not exist, but you do not. If I merely intervene between your thoughts and their results, I would be tampering with a basic law of cause and effect, and the most fundamental law there is in this world. I would hardly help if I depreciated the power of your own thinking. This would be in direct opposition to the purpose of this course. It is much more helpful to remind you that you do not guard your thoughts carefully, except for a small part of the day, and somewhat inconsistently even then. You may feel at this point that it would take a miracle to enable you to do this, which is perfectly true. Okay, so he's saying, you need to watch your thoughts more. Be vigilant. Watch for God and His kingdom, in what you're putting on the altar, what you're valuing. Watch your thoughts more. And he says, you might think that that's going to take a miracle to do. And he says that's actually what it's going to take. Paragraph 96. It is time, however, to consider the whole world of the unconscious, or the unwatched mind. And that's what I was hoping to encourage you to do when I tell you just to spend a little time in the silence. But what he's really wanting us to do is to use these ideas even with our eyes opened, while we're about our business in the most, what might be considered by some to be the most trying of conditions. And yet we happily are staying centered in the awareness that we're a son of God and always cared for. All right? Paragraph 100. It should be emphasized, however, that ultimately there is no compromise possible between everything and nothing. Time is essentially a device by which all compromise in this respect can be given up. It seems to be abolished by degrees, because time itself involves a concept of intervals which do not really exist. The faulty use of creation made this necessary as a corrective device. So what is this? In other words, we use time and we incrementally allot more and more time to our realization that we can be at peace. And then he goes on, he says, "And God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have eternal life." Needs only one slight correction to be entirely meaningful in this context. It should read, "He gave it to his only begotten Son." So let's read that again with that in mind. "And God so loved the world that he gave it to his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have eternal life." It should especially be noted that God has only one Son. It reminds me of my Bible reading today out of Matthew, and it ends Matthew chapter 3 by saying, after Jesus got baptized, "And behold, a voice from heaven said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased." And remember, there's only one Son. He's wanting us to see that. So he's pleased with his Son, who you're one with the Christ. You're one with God. And another idea here that might be a little disturbing to a lot of people that hold the Bible as a sacred book, which many of us do. But we don't want to be so caught up with the exact words that we can't see what's really being meant by it through the interpretations and the translations. We want to be able to see what's really being said. And he says that a little something else is what that particular verse really meant. So give that a little of your thought. Paragraph 107, which is under the meaning of the Last Judgment. He gets into the Last Judgment, which I just love this. The Last Judgment is one of the greatest threat concepts in man's perception. This is only because he does not understand it. Judgment is not an essential attribute of God. Man brought it into being only because of the separation. We have frequently noted, this in paragraph 107, we frequently noted that the miracle is a device for shortening but not abolishing time. It is if a sufficient number of people become truly miracle-minded quickly, the shortening process can be almost immeasurable. It is essential, however, that these individuals free themselves from fear sooner than would ordinarily be the case, because they must emerge from the conflict if they are to bring peace to other minds. So he's given us a motivation to help others, loving others, by ourselves becoming free of this conflict. He calls that at the last sentence of the last paragraph, that this last judgment will extend over a similarly long period and perhaps an even longer one. Its length depends, however, on the effectiveness of the present speed up. So he's talking about how things are speeding up right now. Paragraph 108, the last judgment is generally thought of as a procedure undertaken by God. Actually, it will be undertaken by man with my help. It is a final healing rather than a meting out of punishment, however much man may think that punishment is deserved. Punishment is a concept in total opposition to right-mindedness. The aim of the last judgment is to restore right-mindedness to man. The first step toward freedom must entail a sorting out of the false from the true. This is a process of division only in the constructive sense and reflects the true meaning of the apocalypse. Man will ultimately look upon his own creations and will to preserve only what is good, just as God himself looked upon what he had created and knew that it was good. When everything he retains is lovable, there is no reason for fear to remain with him. And this is his part in the atonement. That's the last two sentences of that chapter. So the apocalypse, when everything he retains is lovable, that'd be the last judgment. There is no reason for fear to remain with him. He also talked about how fear, the term last judgment, is frightening, not only because it has been falsely projected onto God, but also because of the association of last with death. This is an outstanding example of upside-down perception. Actually, the meaning of the last judgment is objectively examined. Actually, if the meaning of the last judgment is objectively examined, it is quite apparent that it is really the doorway to life. When you can say, love is all there is, that's the last judgment. And then we begin to see that ever so slowly, usually through time. And eventually even time will pass away, because he says it's not a reality. It's only a device for our learning. Okay, let's take a look now at, we'll be ready for chapter 3 tomorrow. Be sure to read ahead if you would. And if you'd like to, I would encourage you to. Okay, we're ready for open-mindedness. This is the last quality that he talks about with the qualities that a teacher of God develops. The centrality of open-mindedness, perhaps the last of the attributes the teacher of God acquires, is easily understood when its relation to forgiveness is recognized. Open-mindedness comes with lack of judgment. As judgment shuts the mind against God's teacher, so open-mindedness invites him to come in. As condemnation judges the Son of God as evil, so open-mindedness permits him to be judged by the voice for God on his behalf. As the projection of guilt upon him would send him to hell, so open-mindedness lets Christ's image be projected on him. Only the open-minded can be at peace, for they alone see reason for it. How do the open-minded forgive? They have let go all things that would prevent forgiveness. They have in truth abandoned the world and let it be restored to them in newness and in joy, so glorious they could never have conceived of such a change. Nothing is now as it was formerly. Nothing but sparkles now which seemed to dull. Nothing but sparkles now which seemed so dull and lifeless before. And above all, are all things welcoming, for threat is gone. No clouds remain to hide the face of Christ. Now is the goal achieved. Forgiveness is the final goal of the curriculum. It paves the way for what goes far beyond all learning. The curriculum makes no effort to exceed its legitimate goal. Forgiveness is its single aim, at which all learning ultimately converges. It is indeed enough. So we're learning how to be forgiveness teachers, aren't we? Okay, I am going to read the last paragraph, which is kind of a concluding of this particular section on the attributes of God's teacher. But before I read that, let me just tell you a couple more plants that seeds I want to. I'm reading this from the Seed Savers Exchange, and it's another variety of mustard, which is the Feaster family heirloom. Feaster, F-E-A-S-T-E-R. It's a Brassica juncea. This heirloom variety has been stewarded and preserved by members of the Feaster family of rural Shiloh, Florida, Marion County, since the Civil War. This green-leaved mustard is mild and slightly sweet when cooked and was donated to Seed Savers Exchange by Jerome Feaster in 2014. Bearing long, broad, smooth, upright leaves with a toothed margin, these plants reach 20 to 25 inches tall and 16 to 18 inches wide. And something else that we have read about for you students that have been with me for a year, but I want the new students to hear about this plant because I see a lot of potential that we all are familiar with, but we don't grow a lot of it, or a lot of us. But the greens are so well, and the bulbs. And that's turnips. And this is the purple top white globe. I'm also reading out of the Seed Savers Exchange. And it's a Brassica rapa, listed in the 1885 retail catalog of James J.H. Gregory. Uniform, smooth, white turnip globes are best for eating when 3 to 4 inches in diameter, but remain in good condition until quite large. Sweet, mild, fine-grained white flesh, large tops make delicious greens. Excellent quality, stores very well. And obviously I'm encouraging people to eat lots of greens. Okay, let's take a last look here at this last paragraph in this section of the Manual for Teachers, and then we'll go on to section 5. You may have noticed that the list of attributes of God's teachers does not include those things which are the son of God's inheritance. Terms like love, sinlessness, perfection, knowledge, and eternal truth do not appear in this context. They would be most inappropriate here. What God has given is so far beyond our curriculum that learning but disappears in its presence. Yet while its presence is obscured, the focus properly belongs on the curriculum. It is the function of God's teachers to bring true learning to the world. Properly speaking, it is unlearning that they bring. For that is true learning in the world. Unlearning is true learning in the world. That's why we practice forgiveness. It is given to the teachers of God to bring the glad tidings of complete forgiveness to the world. Blessed indeed are they, for they are the bringers of salvation. How beautiful are the feet and hands, it says in the Bible, of those who bring the glad tidings of salvation. Okay, tomorrow we'll read How is Healing Accomplished in the Manual for Teachers. One last time in our lesson today. I see nothing as it is now. I see nothing as it is now. So until tomorrow, keep that ever close at mind. I see nothing as it is now. Thank you all very much.